Ladies and gentlemen, in today's video, we are going to go on a journey together. We are going to go on a journey to try and figure out what is the greatest, most iconic rivalry in the history of the WWE. And to do this, we've got our good old trusted tournament bracket where we have 85 WWE rivalries that we're going to put against one another to ultimately determine what I think is the greatest rivalry in the WWE. Of course, these videos just tend to get people upset considering it is illegal in the internet wrestling community to have your own opinion, but go ahead and agree or disagree in the comments down below, hopefully as respectfully as you possibly can. And as always, don't forget to subscribe to this channel, ring the bell for notifications. If you're a wrestling fan, I know that you're gonna fall in love with his YouTube channel because we always upload daily wrestling content. All right, that's enough yapping. Let's get to it. Let's get started. Let's make the world mad. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. As I said, there's 85 rivalries that are featured in this tournament, which is an odd number, which means that there's going to be an oddball round where not every single rivalry in this tournament is going to appear in the first round. So basically, a bunch of them are going to get first round buys. But let's go ahead and get started with the Edge and John Cena feud versus the Charlotte versus Bayley feud. And obviously, this is Edge and John Cena. It's frankly not even close. The biggest problem with the John Cena and Edge rivalry is that they never had a proper WrestleMania program. Yes, they had the triple threat match at WrestleMania 25, but it's not the same. And it's also a massive shame that we're not going to get Edge versus John Cena during the John Cena retirement tour. People are clamoring for AEW to give Edge the ability and permission to work John Cena here in his final months, but that's obviously never going to happen. Maybe John Cena will get inducted by Edge into the Hall of Fame. Like, that's certainly one of the names that's going to be thrown out there. But this is easily the answer here. And honestly, this is a rivalry that's, unless it runs into like some of the heavy hitters of the world, like The Rock and Stone Cold or Stone Cold and Vince McMahon, this is going to go really deep in this tournament bracket for me. Edge and John Cena. Next up, we have Daniel Bryan versus The Authority or John Cena versus AJ Styles. Obviously, like from a match perspective, John Cena versus AJ Styles is absolutely 100% the answer here. Their trilogy of matches are just so good. The Royal Rumble match where John Cena became the 16-time world champion is one of my favorite matches of the 2010s. Their SummerSlam match was fantastic as well. But from like a narrative and story perspective, it's Daniel Bryan versus The Authority. That absolutely is the answer. That entire Yes movement, Occupy Raw, the lead up to WrestleMania 30 with the Miracle on Bourbon Street, the amount of times that The Authority screwed over Bryan, the fact that not only did they screw him over from like a storyline perspective, but like in real life by like just not wanting to feature him in that year's Royal Rumble either. The answer is Daniel Bryan versus The Authority. This is one of those like feuds that you had to absolutely be there for. It was a transformational feud, honestly. Like, it brought so many people into that era of wrestling as well. Again, Cena AJ Styles, amazing feud, but I think Daniel Bryan versus The Authority is a heavy hitter. Next, we have Kevin Owens versus Cody Rhodes, Ric Flair versus Dusty Rhodes. The answer here is Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes, but Kevin Owens and Cody Rhodes, man, if it didn't, if it lasted longer, right? If we were talking about years worth of them feuding, absolutely this would be in heavy contention to go deep. The only thing that it has going against it is that it's such a modern day feud, but the matches and the storylines were fantastic, but I have to go Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes. It's funny that both of these have, you know, father-son, Dusty and Cody. Next, we have The Undertaker versus Brock Lesnar or Edge and Randy Orton. I want to say the answer here is The Undertaker and Brock Lesnar. They spell Lesnar wrong, by the way. You have to remember that this isn't just a feud for the streak. A lot of people only remember the streak feud and then the subsequent matches that happened beyond that, which all of the matches that happened after the streak were way better than the actual match for the streak at WrestleMania 30. But they also had a fantastic feud in the Ruthless Aggression era in 2002 that culminated in one of my favorite Hell in a Cell matches of all time at No Mercy 2002. They had a previous match at Unforgiven 2002 that was fantastic. The Edge and Randy Orton feud was a lot of fun. To me, it always felt kind of forced, but whatever. I digress. I think from a storyline perspective and match perspective, in historical perspective too, I'm gonna go Undertaker and Brock Lesnar. Next, we have Edge and Seth Rollins or The Undertaker and Mankind. Listen, the Edge and Seth Rollins feud is forgettable. I borderline forgot about it until this moment right here. I'm definitely going to be going with Undertaker versus Mankind. Bret Hart versus Shawn Michaels, or Mick Foley versus Triple H. I love the Mick Foley versus Triple H feud, just some of the wildest matches of all time. But dude, it's obviously Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels, not even just from like a wrestling on-screen character perspective, like the fictional side of things, but from like real life as well. Like, dude, we're talking about the freaking Montreal screw job here. We're absolutely 100% going Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels. Next up, we have The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin versus AJ Styles and Samoa Joe. This is actually criminal that AJ Styles and Samoa Joe is happening here as early as it is, because it's obviously losing, but I want to give it its flowers because I think many of you that are watching this video and my channel in general might only remember their WWE feud, but like these dudes feuded forever in TNA and absolutely deserve their flowers, but they ran into one of the juggernauts of this tournament. The Rock and Stone Cold obviously is winning here. Let's move it on. Next, we have Seth Rollins versus Drew McIntyre, or Drew McIntyre versus Bobby Lashley. I don't really remember the Seth Rollins and Drew McIntyre feud like that well. I know obviously it culminated in their match at WrestleMania 40, but like before that, yeah, there was like the couple of matches that were like pretty much all like on Monday Night Raw. There was the match where they were both together on opposite sides at Survivor Series War Games, but I didn't think it was like that particularly great. What came afterwards from this feud with CM Punk was way better. Drew McIntyre, Bobby Lashley wasn't particularly like that amazing either, but hell, I kind of dug it more, if I'm being honest with you. Like, it was a weird time. It was the pandemic, but we did have that cool moment with Bobby Lashley taking out Drew McIntyre after his Elimination Chamber match, and The Miz cashing in on him. They had a WrestleMania match as well. Sure, whatever. I'll go Drew and Bobby. Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant, or Randy Orton and Mick Foley. Randy Orton, Mick Foley. This is like one of my favorite feuds. It just didn't last that long. It was like a 2-month feud between like WrestleMania and Backlash, where they had just an unbelievably good match. Obviously, the answer here is Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant. This is an iconic rivalry. Seth Rollins versus Cody Rhodes, or Becky Lynch and Bianca Belair. I like the Becky Lynch and Bianca stuff, but Seth Rollins and Cody Rhodes, in the short amount of time that they feuded, like the 5 months that they had just this unbelievably good trilogy of matches, and I think we're still in chapter 1 of their feud. I'm confident here within the next year or so, these guys are going to have to run into each other, considering one's the biggest babyface in the company right now, the other one's the biggest heel in the company. So there's still more to write about this story here. We're going to go Seth Rollins and Cody Rhodes. The Shield versus Evolution, or Logan Paul, LA Knight. Logan Paul, LA Knight. Like, really? That we're featuring that on this? No, definitely Shield versus Evolution. Shawn Michaels versus Chris Jericho, or Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa. This is crazy because this to me, like, these are both heavy hitters. Shawn Michaels and Chris Jericho is such a good feud from like 2008 era, which had just some fantastic matches, some unbelievably good storytelling. I think under 99% of circumstances, Shawn Michaels and Chris Jericho wins, but Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa literally defined an entire generation of a brand in NXT Black and Gold with how awesome and iconic their feud was there. We're going with Johnny Gargano and Tommaso. Kane versus The Undertaker, Edge and Christian versus the Hardy Boys versus the Dudley Boys. Okay, this is actually kind of insane. Oh my God. Like, I'm actually having a really tough time here. I think you kind of have to go Kane versus The Undertaker. I mean, we are talking about a pair of guys that had not one, but 2 WrestleMania matches. Their first WrestleMania match was fantastic as well. Brother versus brother. The debut of Kane during the Hell in a Cell match with The Undertaker. Yeah, you gotta run with Kane and Undertaker. Rey Mysterio versus Eddie Guerrero, or AJ Styles and Shinsuke Nakamura. It is a tragedy that they're even involving AJ Styles versus Shinsuke Nakamura. If we were like including their New Japan stuff, different story, which I think we should include their New Japan stuff, considering we talked about that with AJ Styles and Samoa Joe and included their TNA stuff. But Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero had just a myriad of good matches. Not even just like in the feud that we're picturing here at WrestleMania 20. 2020 and like the matches afterwards, the custody of Dominic Mysterio, but like their feud in WCW Halloween Havoc, one of the best matches that I've ever seen. Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero is definitely winning here. Vince McMahon versus Stone Cold Steve Austin. Haven't read the other one, but absolutely that's winning. Or Cody Rhodes versus Lesnar. Cody Rhodes versus Lesnar is okay. Vince McMahon and Stone Cold Steve Austin, obviously. Jey Uso versus Roman Reigns, or The Shield versus the Wyatts. Dude, Jey Uso versus Roman Reigns. I'm so serious when I tell you this. Like, defined the Thunderdome era. And to me was the catalyst for the Roman Reigns character that would ultimately dominate for the next 4 years to come in the WWE. I love the Shield versus the Wyatt family. Don't get me wrong. I think it's a absolutely iconic feud as well. But I really credit Jey Uso versus Roman Reigns as the reason as to why both of these guys are where they are today. So I'll go with Jey versus Roman, and I think I'm in the minority here, but I'll go Jey Roman. The Rock versus John Cena or Triple H and Seth Rollins. I did not like the Triple H and Seth Rollins feud. The Rock and Cena, twice in a lifetime, hell yeah. Charlotte Flair versus Becky Lynch, or The Rock and Mankind. The Charlotte Flair Becky Lynch feud, you know, like that's one of those feuds that's gonna go down in the history books as probably one of the most iconic women's feuds of all time. Rock and Mankind was great as well. A little bit short-lived. Meanwhile, Charlotte and Becky Lynch are still probably writing their story as of this day. They'll probably run into each other again. I'll go Charlotte and Becky. Hulk Hogan versus Roddy Piper. Randy Orton versus Triple H. Okay, I'm gonna go Randy Orton Triple H here, predominantly because the storyline was so incredibly good. I mean, we got the insane home invasion aspect of the storyline, but it never culminated in a particularly like great iconic match, but the actual storyline and rivalry was amazing between Randy Orton and Triple H. So I'm going to go here. John Cena versus Bray Wyatt, or The Miz and Daniel Bryan. Okay, John Cena versus Bray Wyatt, you'd think would win here because of the fact that they had not one, but 2 WrestleMania matches. But The Miz and Daniel Bryan, like this to me, is such an underrated rivalry. The stuff that they did in the 2010s for the US Championship, the feud with the Daniel Bryan being the Miz's rookie in NXT, but Daniel Bryan being way better than the Miz as an actual professional wrestler, and the dynamic that they had. The stuff on Talking Smack was so good. We're gonna go the Miz and Daniel Bryan. Undertaker and Shawn Michaels, or Batista versus John Cena. Batista versus John Cena was never as big as it honestly should have been. I feel like they took too long to pull the trigger on this, which I don't really blame them considering they were both like the faces of their respective brands for so long. Undertaker and Shawn Michaels, though, this is like generational, right? Not just across the 2 WrestleMania matches, but before the Attitude Era as well. These guys were feuding and having amazing matches with one another. So Taker and Shawn. Okay, now we're on to the next round. So now we're going to see a bunch of new rivalries here. Ronda Rousey and Becky Lynch, or Bret and Shawn. Definitely Bret and Shawn. Vince and Stone Cold, or Ric Flair and Randy Savage. Dude, I really like Ric Flair and Randy Savage, but Vince and Stone Cold for sure. Undertaker versus Brock Lesnar, or Bloodline Civil War. So I guess Bloodline Civil War would be the Usos versus Roman and Solo. This didn't run that long. Brock Lesnar and The Undertaker, we're talking about like stretching decades, so we're gonna go here. The Rock and Stone Cold, or Booker T and Triple H. This is ridiculous that this is even on here, that this was not a good rivalry. The ending was like the most unsatisfying ending to a WrestleMania feud I've ever seen. The Rock and Stone Cold for sure. Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero versus Oscar and Shayna Baszler. I barely remember this. So Rey Mysterio and Eddie. Sami Zayn versus Kevin Owens, or John Cena and CM Punk. Oh, Jesus Christ, dude. Jesus Christ. Sami Zayn versus Kevin Owens, or John Cena versus CM Punk. I think this is criminal to be this early on in the tournament. Sami Zayn versus Kevin Owens. Their NXT feud was fantastic. They've had a bunch of separate feuds on the main roster, which have all been great. Their most recent one, which culminated in that amazing unsanctioned match at Elimination Chamber that I got to witness with my own eyes, was amazing. But the answer is still John Cena versus CM Punk. I might be being biased here. No, I'm not. I'm definitely 100% being biased here. But hey, this is what this is all about. It's about opinions, and opinions basically by default are biased. So John Cena versus CM Punk. The Shield versus Evolution, or Chris Jericho, Kevin Owens. This should have been way better than it ultimately was. I love the storyline leading into their eventual breakup with the whole Festival of Friendship stuff, but they just did not execute very well. I'll go the Shield versus Evolution. Cody Rhodes versus Drew McIntyre or Roman Reigns versus Kevin Owens. When the hell did this feud really happen? Like, I feel like it's kind of going on right now. But Roman Reigns and Kevin Owens, dude, this is they're going to fight forever until the end of time. What do they have, like 4 different Royal Rumble championship matches? Definitely going to go Roman and Kevin here. Bret Hart versus Owen Hart or Rey Mysterio versus Dominic Mysterio. I'm going to go Bret and Owen, but I love Rey Mysterio and Dominic Mysterio. This still has more chapters left to be written. I feel like if we're doing this in 2 years, I might be going Rey and Dom. Kind of crazy that these are both family feuds, right? Brother versus brother, father and son. We'll go Bret and Owen. Ilya Dragunov and Gunther or The Rock and John Cena. I mean, obviously from a match perspective, it's obviously Ilya and Gunther, but like rivalries are more than just the matches that happen, and The Rock and John Cena defined the 2010s if you ask me, so we're gonna go here. Bret Hart and Stone Cold versus The Rock and Triple H. The Rock and Triple H does not get talked about enough. I think it is a wonderful feud that had legs to go into the 2010s, but they never really did anything with like The Rock's returns to the WWE. They teased it. They teased it when The Rock won Final Boss, but at that point it was too late. Bret Hart and Stone Cold Steve Austin. It's actually like one of my favorite WrestleMania programs and feuds of all time, which culminated in one of my favorite matches of all time, Bret and Stone Cold. Edge and John Cena or Mickie James and Trish Stratus. I remember the Mickie James and Trish Stratus feud like it was yesterday. Wonderful feud, kind of a weird feud as well from like a storyline perspective. But yeah, the answer here is Edge and John Cena. Hogan and Savage or Roman and Seth? Dude, these are like cut from the same cloth almost. That's kind of insane. Like these are almost like borderline identical feuds, but in different eras with some changes to like the obviously like context and whatnot. But these are like brother versus brother going up against each other. Again, modern day bias because I got to witness it all, and this storyline is still going. We know that it's gonna eventually climax in a WrestleMania match soon here between Roman and Seth. But yeah, I'm gonna go Roman and Seth. The old heads here. I respect you. I respect Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage from a storyline perspective and the feud that they had, but I'm going to let my modern day bias take me here. I'm going to go Roman and Seth. Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Undertaker or Drew and Bobby. Looking back on it, I kind of regretted taking Drew and Bobby. So I'm glad that I'm just going to eliminate it here. I'll go Stone Cold and The Undertaker. Brock Lesnar and Kurt Angle. Oh, the New Day versus the Usos. Look, Kurt Angle and Brock Lesnar was an amazing Ruthless Aggression era feud. I think it is the defining feud of the Ruthless Aggression era with their fantastic set of matches, the Iron Man match, the SummerSlam match, the WrestleMania 19 match. There's so much to love here. They even had like the time where they were like friends with one another. The New Day versus the Usos, like, dude, it's such an iconic tag team feud again from the 2010s, but I'm going to go Lesnar and Angle. Roman Reigns versus Solo Sikoa or Seth Rollins versus Cody Rhodes. Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa was like okay at best. Seth Rollins and Cody, this is a fantastic feud. Daniel Bryan versus The Authority or Undertaker versus Mankind. I'm gonna go Daniel Bryan versus The Authority. John Cena and Brock Lesnar or Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa. I think John Cena and Brock Lesnar as a feud is so highly overrated. They had like their feud going into Extreme Rules 2011. That was fun. Their SummerSlam feud where Lesnar just ate Cena was The stuff going on right now, I don't really care for. Their Ruthless Aggression era feud, which did have a WWE Championship match, was before John Cena even came close to being as popular as he ultimately ended up becoming. He just got eaten alive by Lesnar then. And I've already spoken at length about Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa. Like, this defined an entire brand of professional wrestling. Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa. Sasha Banks versus Bayley or Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns. Dude, this is so hard because their NXT feud is so good. I talked about I talked about Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano defining an era of NXT. So did Sasha Banks and Bayley. Like, genuinely, they actually defined not even just like an era of NXT, but it was, I firmly believe off the back of them that the women's evolution really got going, because these two were having absolute heater matches on NXT while the divas on the main roster were barely even allowed to have 2 minutes on screen. Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns, yes, it had multiple WrestleMania WrestleMania main events, 3 of them. I only liked one of them, the 31 one, where Seth Rollins cashed in. I do love their last man standing match at SummerSlam with the tractor and whatnot, but I have to go Sasha Banks and Bayley just in terms of overall impact. I feel like it's more impactful than a feud that had 3 WrestleMania main events, and I can't believe I'm saying that. I'm gonna go Sasha Bayley. Roman Reigns versus Cody Rhodes or Lita Trish Stratus. Lita Trish Stratus, iconic women's feud for sure. Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes, though, I mean, two years of build up to the moment that we got. Like, we're obviously gonna go here. Charlotte and Becky or Randy Orton and Triple H. Okay, this is where I now feel confident in saying that Randy Orton and Triple H, like, their matches hurt them here. It hurt them because Charlotte and Becky have put on consistently like strong matches with one another. My favorite one of theirs being Last Woman Standing at Evolution all those years ago. I'm gonna go here. Triple H and Shawn Michaels, Dean Ambrose, Seth Rollins. Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins, I feel like should have been better than it ultimately was. It was still a really solid feud. Triple H and Shawn Michaels was such an amazing feud. For a long time, it was my favorite feud of all time. The only downside of it, and I can't believe I'm saying this, is that it wasn't long enough. And I'm saying I can't believe I'm saying this because it felt like it went on forever. It went on for years in the Ruthless Aggression era. But I feel like it could have just gone on for longer because they always delivered such amazing matches. This to me is the definition of a blood feud. Triple H and Shawn Michaels for sure. John Cena versus Randy Orton or Randy Orton versus Bray Wyatt. Look, Randy Orton versus Bray Wyatt, I wish I could forget it. I did not like it. It did have 2 WrestleMania matches. Let's not forget that. But neither of them really particularly blew me away. I'll go John Cena, Randy Orton. Obviously, we're talking about decades worth of these guys feuding. These guys have been feuding. They feuded in the 2000s, in the 2010s. They feuded in the 2020s. Like 3 decades, 3 separate decades. We got feuds for John Cena and Randy Orton. Kane versus The Undertaker or Rhea Ripley versus Bianca Belair. There's still more here. There's still more to chew on. This story is still being told. Let's talk in 5 more years. This could be a feud that's going to be tough to dethrone. But this right now, as it stands, it's an easy one. Kane and The Undertaker. Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant or The Miz and Daniel Bryan. I'm going to go Hulk and Andre. Liv Morgan versus Rhea Ripley or Adam Cole versus Finn Balor. Listen, I'm going to go Liv Morgan and Rhea Ripley here. Adam Cole and Finn Balor obviously had fantastic matches, but so have Rhea Ripley and Liv Morgan. And you've got like the aspect of like they used to be tag team partners. They despised each other. The ending of the Royal Rumble, the Dominic Mysterio aspect. We're going to go Liv Morgan here and Rhea. Gunther versus Sheamus or Sting and Ric Flair. From that, dude, I obviously love this, but it had like 1 match. I wish it had more. They had the triple threat match, but in terms of like staying power, it's Sting and Ric Flair, and it's literally not even close. CM Punk versus Seth Rollins or Rhea Ripley versus Charlotte Flair. This didn't actually have a storyline. Go back to it. Like they barely even tried to create a narrative out of this. The match was unbelievably good, and they have had multiple great matches already, multiple WrestleMania matches as well. But CM Punk and Seth Rollins, it is, a modern one. It is the driving force of current day television. But yeah, I'm going to go Seth and Punk. Next, we have Sting and Big Van Vader or Chad Gable versus Gunther. I got to be honest, I don't know much about Sting versus Big Van Vader. So I'm going to go Chad and Gunther because I really like this feud to the point where people were so mad that this feud culminated with it being Sami Zayn to dethrone Gunther and not Chad Gable. We'll go here, but I'm going to need people in the comments section to tell me if I'm wrong here with Sting versus Vader. CM Punk versus Jeff Hardy or Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes. This absolutely is a preference. CM Punk and Jeff Hardy is one of my favorite feuds of all time. I thought that the storytelling of this feud and the matches that it led to were just so fantastic. I'm going to go CM Punk and Jeff. Undertaker and Shawn or Jay Roman. I feel pretty confident going Undertaker, Shawn. Kurt Angle versus Samoa Joe versus Triple H and Batista. This is fascinating that we have a proper like TNA feud. Like both guys were eventually in the WWE, but never feuded with each other in the WWE. The Triple H and Batista feud was a lot of fun as well. But it was like 1 year, really, like even less than a year. It was like a 5-month feud, like going from the Royal Rumble and then Batista like properly winning the feud against Triple H later on in 2005. But then like beyond that, they never really crossed paths again and never really feuded again, unfortunately. They did have the WrestleMania 35 2005 feud, but I think a lot of us want to forget that. When you think Triple H Batista, you think of like their 4-month feud in 2005. Kurt Angle and Samoa Joe. I'm going to be fair here because I went into this thinking that this was WWE. So I'm going to go Triple H and Batista. But if I was just doing like wrestling in general, I think I might go Kurt Angle and Samoa Joe just because I was under the impression that the rules of this were WWE only. I will pick Triple H and Batista. The Rock versus John Cena or Liv Morgan, Rhea Ripley. We're going to go Rock and John. By the way, this is now a new round. John Cena versus Randy Orton or CM Punk versus Jeff Hardy. I hate this because I like the storylines that happen in Jeff Hardy versus CM Punk more, but it's just not as long lasting and as generational as John Cena and Randy Orton. So I'm going to go here. The Undertaker versus Brock Lesnar or John Cena and CM Punk. I'm going to go Taker and Lesnar. Oh, that's insane. Brother versus brother or fictional brother versus fictional brother. That's crazy. I'm going to go Kane and The Undertaker. Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa versus Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins. Dude, I've gone with so many of the modern feuds that like going with Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins. Obviously, like it's such an easy choice because it's what's currently going on right now. But this story is being written. I'm telling you, man, if you were there for Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano, you will agree with me. This is the better rivalry. Obviously, this is the bigger rivalry from star power and from bigger names. But from quality, man, Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa. Vince McMahon and Stone Cold versus Sasha Banks and Bayley. It's almost unfair. Vince McMahon and Stone Cold is like one of the most important rivalries in the history of the sport. So yeah. Triple H and Shawn Michaels versus Kurt Angle and Brock Lesnar. We'll go Triple H and Shawn Michaels. Charlotte Flair versus Becky Lynch or Seth Rollins and Cody Rhodes. I'll go Seth and Cody. Brett and Shawn versus Shield and Evolution. This is easy. Brett and Shawn. The Rock and Stone Cold versus CM Punk and Seth Rollins. The Rock and Stone Cold. Daniel Bryan versus The Authority or Undertaker versus Stone Cold. I'm going to go Undertaker versus The Authority. I'm just realizing I said Undertaker versus The Authority. I got confused there. Daniel Bryan versus The Authority is what I meant. Edge and John Cena or Roman Reigns and Kevin Owens. Definitely Edge and John Cena. Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero versus Triple H and Batista. I'm going to go Rey and Eddie. Undertaker and Shawn Michaels versus Ric Flair and Sting. I think I'm going to go Ric Flair and Sting. Roman Reigns versus Cody Rhodes or Chad Gable versus Gunther. This is really easy. Roman Reigns versus Cody Rhodes. Bret Hart versus Stone Cold or Hulk Hogan versus Andre. I'm sorry to my old heads, but I gotta go Bret and Stone Cold. Stone Cold versus The Rock or The Rock and John Cena. Look, obviously both super important feuds, but The Rock and Stone Cold for sure. We're now moving really fast here because we're in the round of 16, so this is another round here. Edge and John Cena versus Triple H and Shawn Michaels. I'm gonna go Edge and Shawn. I keep mixing my words. I keep mixing feuds here. Edge and Shawn would have been like a proper fantastic feud, but Edge and John Cena. Randy Orton and John Cena versus Brett and Stone Cold. Dude, the 3-decade aspect of this is what has it winning over. So yeah, I'll go John Cena, Randy. Seth Rollins and Cody Rhodes versus Kane and The Undertaker. I'm going to go Kane and The Undertaker here. I feel pretty comfortable in that. Bret and Shawn versus Sting and Ric Flair. I have to give this to Bret and Shawn. The Undertaker and Brock Lesnar versus Daniel Bryan versus The Authority. I'm gonna go Daniel Bryan versus The Authority. I think I'm showing major bias here because this is one of my favorite feuds of all time. I'm gonna go Daniel Bryan here. Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero versus Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa. I feel this is actually pretty easy. I'm sorry, Eddie and Rey, but I gotta go Johnny and Tommaso. Vince McMahon and Stone Cold versus Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes. Vince McMahon and Stone Cold. All right, so we are in the round of 8, the Elite 8. Kane and The Undertaker versus Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa. Dude, people are going to be mad at me that I'm taking Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa this far. I'm telling you, if you were watching NXT at this time, you will agree with me. I know you will. Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa. Bret Hart versus Shawn Michaels or Stone Cold Steve Austin versus The Rock. We're talking about 3 WrestleMania main events here. Like, we're also talking about a generation-defining feud with generationally good matches, with real live heat as well here with Bret and Shawn. This is tough, man. I like it. This could have been the final. Dude, the Montreal Screwjob side of things, has me winning this over here. I'm going to go Bret and Shawn. Stone Cold and Vince McMahon or Edge and John Cena. I'm Stone Cold and Vince. John Cena and Randy Orton versus Daniel Bryan versus The Authority. This is where Daniel Bryan and The Authority loses. John Cena and Randy Orton. All right, we are in the semifinal. We are down to the final four. Bret and Shawn versus John Cena and Randy Orton. Quality over quantity is kind of where we're at. When you really think about it, there isn't that much quality to Randy Orton versus John Cena. There's a lot of in this feud. There's just so much of it, and there's so many years of it, and there's decades of it. Bret and Shawn, though, man, it was sure, a handful of years, but those handful of years are still talked about to this day. They make literal documentaries about the feud of Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels. I'm gonna go Bret and Shawn. And then Vince McMahon and Stone Cold versus Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa. This is where my NXT Black and Gold Mark Santi has to go out the window. I have to pick the correct answer, which is Vince and Stone Cold. And then this is the final here. Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels or Vince McMahon and Stone Cold. I think a lot of the 90s old heads, Attitude Era lovers are maybe proud of me, for making it to this final two. I think the answer was always obvious from the beginning. I think it is the most important and most iconic feud in the history of this sport, and just entertainment in general. Vince McMahon and Stone Cold absolutely is the greatest WWE rivalry of all time. I think that Bret and Shawn is the greatest rivalry of all time from two wrestlers, but wrestling is more than just wrestling and the wrestlers. It is about the characters and the people on screen and the storylines being told. Vince and Stone Cold is the answer, and it is the winner. All right, folks, that's it. I know these videos tend to divide people left, right, and center, but that's okay. You know what? This is what these videos are designed to do, to make us think, make us maybe provide arguments that maybe I didn't see or maybe didn't fully grasp. But that's it, guys. I'm done. Goodbye. Get out of here.